Well, howdy y'all. Welcome back to The Social Regressive, the home of a real tripod snob. I've used tripods for all kinds of video, film, still camera work. I've done all kinds of things, spotting with scopes, and so I always look for a really good one. This is the Athlon Midas CF29, and today we're going to take a look at its qualities first. We're going to save the specs and stats, and for now we're just going to get down to how this thing moves around. Now this, as you can see, it has a rifle on top of it, and that's one of my intended purposes. Out here in Oklahoma, a lot of time you get out on one of our ranches, and we don't have neatly manicured ranches. So in order to get over the scrub and over the tall grass, yeah, you can't really get prone, so you might as well get something that's gonna be extra tall like this. All right, so let's just start glassing around the neighborhood, and no, I'm not gonna use a rifle. I just wanted you to see how this works. So what we're gonna do is we're going to test this tripod and see how smooth it is, especially from different transitions, if it moves quickly. Because one of the things that you have difficulty with a rifle or with a spotting scope, or heck with a video camera for that matter, you want to be able to track really smoothly through a moving target. Like it could be, you know, a car that's going by and you just want to get film of it, or maybe you want, you know, have some kind of animal you want to track along with. And so we want to see not just how stable the tripod is, but we want to be able to see how this is going to move along with whatever we're dealing with. Okay, so right now I want to point out the first thing. Okay, let's go ahead and fire this puppy up. First thing is that we have a lock on the ball head. Now this has two different kind of axes of movement. You have a panning motion here. This is going to have kind of a fluid motion to it, pretty darn smooth. And then the rest of the movement is going to be taken up in this ball head right here. Now this can pan as well, as I'm going to show you. If I lock down this lower part, okay, so I'll go ahead and turn the lock to keep that in place. So now this doesn't want to pan anymore. If I unlock this, okay, I can move the ball head all around. That's one of the great things about this. It can cant, it can tilt, it can pan, it can do all kinds of things. But this, for some movements, is not going to be the most stable. You can see that gravity can take it because it doesn't have any kind of spring action in there. Some regular heads like we have on the tripod here that you're actually sitting on, some of those have a spring that helps to keep things nice and level. But for this, yeah, we're kind of balancing on top of a ball. So I think what I'm going to do is split duty. I'm going to have a very loose pan down below. And let's tighten up the ball joint just a little bit. Let's see what we get into. There we go. Okay, that kind of wants to stick in position, but I think this is going to move around well. This is the Athlon Aries UHD. This is a 15-45 by 65 that I think they no longer make. They had this straight one and they had an angled one. If you can find one on the used market, these are great for all kinds of practical field work, but they still do have the 20-60, I think? Yeah, 20-60 by 80, and that one's gonna be really good as well. Same kind of setup, same glass, and you can see through the image here that this is just gorgeous. So yeah, I've picked out an object there in the background. And what I'm going to do now is we'll start with just some static stuff. So I'm going to lock down the ball head on top of this. Okay, so I have this locked. We're staring at a mailbox. And what I want to see is if I start shaking the tripod around, how much motion am I going to get? All right, here's me slapping the tripod. That's not bad. I can see that it's messing with the pan just a little bit, so why don't I lock that down too? Okay, let's lock the pan. And let's see what happens. Yeah, not bad. So this is going to be a test of the kind of rigidity of the legs and how they attach. A lot of the legs you're going to get on other tripods, they may have some flex, some wobble to them. And this, even though it's kind of a monopole, some of these are going to have dual legs to help with that stability. This is just a single, and yeah, these seem to be really nice. I could put some weight on this, I could accidentally bump it and do different things, and it's not going to mess up my image too badly. Right now we're at 15x. Let's crank this up a little bit. Refocus. Okay, there we go. Give it a little slap. Okay, so still, that's not too bad. Let's back it off to 15 again. and take a look at some of the other dynamics we might get into. Now, one of the things that I'm doing to help with stability this time is I'm hanging a sandbag here. And one of the cool things about this tripod is it has a built-in hook. And it's not some cheap plastic thing. This is actually milled aluminum that's sticking out of the bottom of the tripod head. And so this is gonna pull straight down. There are other ways to get stability that come with this tripod, and we'll take a look at those later. But yeah, I'm very pleased with this so far. This is a very steady setup. So let's try some of the dynamics. I'm going to release, well, let's see, first I'll release the pan, and let's see how smooth the pan is. So here it is at its completely fluid setting. This is its lowest setting. Okay, so I'm going to apply just a little bit of pressure. Here, I'll do it to this side. And at some point, it's going to start to pan. Okay. So what happened, you saw it begin to move just a little bit. That's actually just some flexibility within the attachment up here. That might have been the scope kind of moving relative to the foot here, but that wasn't actually moving the head. And then when you saw that great big break, that's when we got through static friction, got to dynamic friction, and it started moving. So it does take a little bit to get it moving. This is one where I would probably want to hold on to the whole unit and try to move it as one. Okay. Oh, we have a moving target. Let's see if we can stay on the door handle. Okay, not bad, not bad. Again, that's 15x. That was probably about 50 yards away, and so it's not too shabby. Here, I think we have another moving target coming in. Let me loosen up the ball head and see if we can track along well with this truck. Let's see where he's going. Okay. Let's come back to the mailbox. All right, so this has a certain amount of friction built into it altogether. I have everything loosened up right now. The ball head is completely loose. This is as light a friction as it gets. And then I have this turned off, and then I have the fluid pan. This is all turned off. Everything is as loose as it goes. And you can see that there is some static friction that's keeping the scope in place. So I can kind of hit this a little bit, and yeah, it doesn't really move much. So it does kind of stick in one spot. If you try to get it out of that spot, okay, there is a little bit of a snap as it comes out. That's interesting. It seems to be maybe a little better in this direction. Wow, that's really smooth panning to the right. Oh, here we go. Let's see if we can track this guy. Once it gets going, it's quite smooth. Very nice. Yeah, its dynamic friction is quite good once you get past that one little static spot. So let's try moving things around more vertically. Let's see what this is like if we start out on the mailbox and then we want to get up into the trees. All right, so I'm going to give it some pressure. Okay, it's actually quite smooth once it gets going, but it does have those static spots. So if you do come to a rest at some point, it wants to stick a little bit, and then you can get going. But really, I think this is the smoothest ball head that I've ever felt. This is just, yeah, it's wonderfully smooth. You can see that it's quite large in its housing, and the housing it has this great big sleeve that completely encapsulates it. And I think that's what helps to keep this nice and smooth. It doesn't have any individual points that are attaching to it. So let's take a look at the controls real quick. The lock here on the side, this is what's going to actually kind of crush the ball into place. And so now this is going to be very steady. There's still a little bit of wobble that I can see as I move this around, and I think that's coming from the pan function. So I'm going to lock that. Okay. Let's go ahead and lock down the pan, see if that changes anything. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so now this is completely locked in place, and I can touch the scope. It bounds back. It looks like there's just a little bit of flex maybe in the scope itself here on this mount. And there's a little bit of rubber between the foot and this, so I think that's what's kind of accounting for this movement. Okay, I'm pressing down pretty hard, and when I let Look at that, it just bounds right back into place. So this has some wonderful stability to it, and the dynamics aren't bad. So what's this gonna be like if I need to track animals out in the field somewhere? If I have, like, I'm trying to track a coyote that's running, I think that it's pretty quick to get into action. All I have to do is just relax these two controls, and you can see that the scope didn't go anywhere. It's decently balanced. It's a little bit heavy on the back, but I can have both hands on the scope and track along. Yeah, and that should be relatively smooth and easy to work. Up to the trees, back down to the ground, up to the trees, back down to the ground. And keep in mind as we look at all this that the grass, the house, the mailbox that you see right there, that's only about 75 yards away. That's pretty close for a spotting scope. So if we're dealing with targets at more reasonable distances, like 300, 400 yards for a coyote or a hog or something, then this is going to really come into its own. It's going to be a little bit easier to track around. I think it's also going to be pretty easy to pop from one target to another. So again, here I have my mailbox. Mailbox is going to be target number 1. And let's go to the security sign back there. Okay, not too bad. Mailbox, security sign. There's some things you can do with a ball head tripod that you can't do with your normal heads, like the one that I've got under the camera here. This can allow you to do some pretty crazy stuff, like turn everything completely on its side. And from here, you still get all kinds of tilt on this, and you can see this sideways in the camera. I'm going to flip the footage so you can see it a little better, but yeah, you can actually turn this completely on its side. And in some ways, this gets a little bit easier to move around. You can see that we're restricted to just pan on the, or excuse me, just tilt on the ball, and then we have just pan down here at the bottom of the head. So this is one way that you can maybe get a little bit more stability if you wanted it, instead of it sitting, up on top of the ball like this. The Midas actually has 2 spots that allow you to do that. It has 2 different cutouts. So you can kind of flop it off to the right or off to the left, and it kind of depends on how you have the head set up, because this has a pretty large knob for attaching the foot. The controls on the head are pretty simple. We'll start at the top. First off, you're going to have this thumb nut that you can use to remove the foot. The foot is very small. It has a little bit of travel front to back so that you can better balance whatever it is that you have on top, whether it's a camera or a spotting scope like this one. You also have a little bit of motion on the foot itself, so that it has a little track in it so that you can set whatever your device is, you can put it in the spot that you want. So right now this is pretty well balanced. And that's one of the reasons why it's not easily falling over, even if I reduce friction on the controls down here. Yeah, it's staying pretty well stable. I'm going to go ahead and crank that up just a little bit though. Some of the other controls as you see as we move down, first off, this is going to be for the pan. So this is going to be that back and forth motion. Right now it's as loose as it goes, and it's going to be nice and smooth that way. As you start to tighten this up, it's going to get slower and in some ways smoother. Now this is going to affect both the static friction and the dynamic friction, so when you're trying to get from a stop to moving, it's going to push a little bit harder, and so you might actually pop a little harder than you would if this were loosened up. But once you're in motion, this tends to have a very smooth movement to it, and so it's up to you with testing to see what you like. This is the friction control for the ball head, so this is going to give you some minute control over how smoothly this moves. It gives just a little bit of extra clamp onto the ball head here. And then on this side, we have kind of a gross adjustment. This is the one that you're probably going to use the most. This will completely lock down the head to keep it from moving at all. So you can really put some torque on this one, and now the ball head just doesn't move one bit. And then if you loosen it up, you can go through some different friction phases, where right now this is kind of like moving through molasses. It's smooth, but then it will kind of affect that pop as well, so remember that. This is another thing that you might want to play with. You can set this how you want. It's loose all the way, or tightened up all the way. You can see what you like best. You can see that here on the main housing that we do have a level This is going to help you to figure out, get this level first. That's what you're going to do when you get into kind of a static position, get this level. And then from here, since you do have so much movement, there is another bubble level up attached to the kind of foot area. And so if you've made some kind of drastic movement, you want to make sure that you're still level. Yeah, you can check that and set it there. Everything that you see through here is finely machined aluminum. There's going to be steel parts on the inside, like the screws, of course. But that's why you're going to have a very stout build. This feels very solid, very well built, but it's also going to be very lightweight compared to a lot of the heads like this one on the tripod that I just had our camera attached to. This one weighs quite a bit. Actually, this whole rig does. But that's where we start to get into some of the fun about this one. You can add weight for stability if you want, just like I showed here. So here's a close-up of that hook. So I just have a cheap sandbag hanging from it. If you want to see some of these, I'll put links to all the things that we're talking about today. I'll put links in the description below and you can check them out. And one of them is these sandbags. You can get a whole bunch of these at once. You can actually use one to hang to add extra weight and make this more stable. You can put them around the feet, all kinds of cool things that you can do with these. Today's footage is being brought to us by the Tactacam Spotter LR. That's this camera attached to the back of the spotting scope. This is a really cool little rig. You get these special arbors that adapt onto the back of your spotting scope, and then this is a camera that can take really high resolution still photos, or you can get video, as you can see here. This can record in all kinds of different formats, different resolutions, frame rates, and it's just a very simple piece to use. So yeah, if you are into tracking birds and you don't want to have to stick a giant DSLR on the back or anything, this is kind of an all-in-one unit that can do a whole lot. Here's a close-up of the foot. We have rubber pads all the way across the top, and this is removable. You can take the thumb screw out. You can see that it has a coin slot, has a little bit of movement front to back, and then you can remove it and put it in this other slot and get side to side. So if you have something that's unstable in one direction, you can kind of move it around based on that. Up here, you can see that we have these two cutouts, and this is going to be for the stops that are on the back of the foot. You see these are removable, and these can function as kind of safety bumpers. So if I have the head not entirely, or I have the foot not entirely locked into place, you can see that this can slide around. That can help me get better balance, but you can see that it can't fall off accidentally. It's a great little safety feature. Yeah, you have these nice little bumpers. Once it's completely locked into place, this just does not move around anymore. Nice and tight. Let's remove the sandbag. There we go. And take a look at some of the extra features of these legs. Now, like normal, this is going to have some of your spin friction locks. So what you do to loosen this up is you turn that, and then you can see that now it starts to collapse. It goes in and out. Turn it back the other way, and that locks it into place. And these don't have any slide in them. I'm practically putting all my weight on it, and it is not moving anywhere. So the friction locks work really well. But check this out up here. This is going to appeal to a bunch of you guys that you're not exactly sure what kind of things you're going to get into. All right, so this little block that says Athlon is a movable piece. In its natural state, it's going to hit this little shelf, and that's going to set its angle. So all of these will hit the same angle every single time. However, if you want to increase your stability and possibly get down lower, you can move this in and out. Wow, that's nice and smooth. But if you take it out some, it's going to go past that lock spot and hit this one instead. So now you can really start to spread the legs out. This is more like a 45-degree angle on all corners. It's probably about a 30 in its natural state right here, but then there's one extra. So if you want to get really down low to the ground, like say you're sitting on the grass and you want to be able to be very stable and see things really well, yeah, you can pop this out one more. So I'm going to back this off just a little bit, pull it all the way out, and now it's going to actually hit a spot just right on the base. And this is going to be extremely flat. So yeah, you can get very stable, very low. And this is the kind of thing that we've done with some of our cameras before in order to use, like say, a really, really high-powered lens, something like a 600 millimeter on a DSLR for long-range shooting. then yeah, you can make that much wider and really kind of lock it down. Let's check out some of the goodies that are in the bag, which, by the way, all of this comes in one package. One of the nicest things about Athlon is that they didn't make it so you have a whole bunch of accessories you have to buy. Everything actually just comes right in this case. So this is an over-the-shoulder case. You have handles. It's camouflaged, as you can see, so that's going to be nice for us hunters and tacticalers. It has a shoulder strap, just simple webbing. It is adjustable. And then inside the pack, first off, you're going to have this really nice foam that's covered with fabric. So this is going to help to protect the head. The head is one of the more expensive parts on a tripod. You want to make sure it doesn't get battered around. And so this is going to do a great job of keeping it in place and kind of locking it down. It has Velcro, and so this is going to wrap around the head. The rest of the case is padded as well, so your investment is protected. This is a shoulder strap specifically for carrying this tripod when it's got its legs already deployed. A lot of the time I carry these around by putting my hand kind of under here and holding it up over my shoulder, and that gets kind of tiring. So what this can do is this goes between two of the legs, and then you put this over your shoulder and you can carry the whole rig as it is. So if you got a rifle up top or a spotting scope or a camera or whatever, you can just kind of leave it in place and carry it with this. Really cool, it just attaches by Velcro. The extra shoulder strap for carrying the whole rig, like if you want to just carry the tripod itself, you have this. It attaches by Velcro again, really easy, great padding and camouflaged. And one thing that I should point out is that each of these carbon fiber legs is wrapped up at the top with this kind of padded material. It's going to make it easier to handle, easier to move around, and it also has kind of Molly, PALS type webbing so that you can attach all kinds of goodies if you want to. You can actually have things hanging off the legs. This again attaches by Velcro so you can remove it really easily. One extra goodie here in the case is this strange looking sort of fabric bucket. And you might have seen these on telescope tripods. You can attach each of these three corners to one of the legs, and you get a basket that hangs down here, so you can put extra goodies if you need to have equipment ready, like maybe you want to have a pistol in there, or you want to have maybe extra scopes or cameras, or just weight. You can use this for ballast. You can put a rock in there to hold this and make it more steady out in the field. But wait, there's more. In this side pouch, which is again Velcro held, you get this ball attachment. So if you want to use any other type of tripod head, or if you want to reattach this tripod head to this, what this does is it extends your capability so that when you have this installed inside the base, this is going to lock in place, and when you loosen this screw, it's going to allow the whole base to move around like another ball head. So if you have a really difficult environment, like say it's a really rocky terrain or up on a slope, and you're having a difficult time getting this level, you can attach this and it adds extra ability to camp this around, tilt it, whatever. This is going to allow extra movement, and that's pretty cool. So if you have another tripod head, like if you have a Bogen Manfrotto or like this Ravelli right here, you can attach it to this. One last thing. Here in this side pouch, there we go, on the outside, they haven't left you alone. There is a manual, and not just a manual, but you have spiked feet. And these, as you can see, have a hole going through them so you can very firmly attach them. You just run one of these wrenches through. So the wrenches are going to work for tightening up the legs if you want to increase the friction on the legs so they don't move as easily, or if you want to loosen them up, whatever you want to do. It's also wrenches for just various things that you have on here. But you have these spiked feet that can swap out for the rubber ones that you see here. By default, you have these semi-spiked rubber feet. Let's take a good look at one. There it is. It's going to dig into the terrain pretty well. It's also going to stick really well on concrete and carpet like you have here. So this shouldn't move around on you much. It just unscrews, and then you can put the spiked foot in its place if you know that you're going to be out in the great outdoors. Now on to the specs and stats. The first one that I need to mention is that there are actually 5 different models of this. At the bottom end, you have the AL28. That's going to be an aluminum one instead of carbon fiber, and that one's going to have an MSRP of $313 when I last checked. That means that when you purchase it, it's going to be somewhere in the 200s. It's going to have nice aluminum legs, it's going to be relatively lightweight, but not as lightweight as the carbon, and it's going to have a smaller ball head up top. It's not going to be able to handle quite as much weight. That's one of the biggest differences between the other 4 models on top. You have the CF29, which is the one right here. This has the smallest legs available of that series. You step up to the 32, the 36, and the 40. And each of those is going to have just more stability and more ability to take the weight. I think they all have the same head on top. It's just down to the legs themselves. They're going to be thicker around, more carbon fiber, a little bit heavier, and they'll be able to handle bigger stuff. So if you have some kind of giant rifle, like this one actually can handle up to 33 pounds. So I might be able to get some kind of big Magnum up on top of here, maybe even one of the big BMGs. But yeah, I can get quite a bit of weight up on top of this, and the legs and everything should be able to handle it. But as you get up into the 40s, yeah, it's going to move less and it's going to be able to take more of that weight. One of the big deals about this one is that it only weighs 5.5 pounds. That is the entire package. So if you have all your stuff attached to it, it's still going to be a very lightweight machine. And this is going to be easy to place on a pack, like maybe attached to the side of a backpack that has MOLLE webbing. And yeah, this is going to go with you pretty much everywhere. It stows pretty small, so it's 26 inches folded, just a little bit over 2 feet. That means that it will attach to a backpack pretty well. Each of the legs, this is a 3-section setup, so each of them is going to collapse down to that 26 inches. Its lowest height that it can get off the ground in that crazy configuration, 9 inches. The highest that it can go is 65 inches. I'm 6'2", so that's going to be 74 inches, and I'm not used to having a tripod that can actually handle my height. This is one that I'm not even maxed out. Check it out. Look at the legs and how I have them set up. This is not up all the way that I need. And actually, this is going to be just fine for taking a shot at, like on a prairie dog or something at distance. I don't have to have it all the way up, but it's great to be able to finally get something that fits me a little bit better. The legs are 10-layer carbon fiber. It's a very pretty kind of gray look. And like I mentioned before, this is compatible with all kinds of Arca accessories. This is kind of the standard now. Arca is going to be your setup for all your camera mounts like Bogen, Manfrotto, and just all the other big guys. They have Arca up at the top. So if you get into some kind of foot that you would like one of the longer ones, to be able to really set your balance perfectly the way that you want, you can get that. Also on the rifle mount that you saw here, now this is one that I'm not going to recommend. This is the Sunway Photo M-LOK adapter. I had to make some major mods to this morning using a Dremel and some tungsten bits in order to get it to actually fit inside the slots. It doesn't seem to actually fit the M-LOK standard. But once I got it in there, you can see that it's nice and long, and I can set my balance based on whatever I have on top. So I can easily slide it around inside the head. If I take the can off and the center of balance moves further backward, I can move the rifle forward. The CF29 I've demonstrated today has an MSRP of $600. Street price right now, you're looking at about $430. And remember that it does come with all those accessories. So everything I showed you today, it comes with all that. So thank you guys for watching. You're going to see this in action. I've actually had this out on the range a couple times already, and maybe you didn't even notice. But yeah, I have been testing it in the background, and I can't wait to especially get the rifle on it and see how it performs out on a hunt. And we'll see if we get into a hog hunt or something where I can test that out. But yeah, thanks for watching, you guys. Make sure you check out the other videos on the way. We have some CMMG tests and some scopes to talk about. So yeah, we have a lot of exciting stuff coming up. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These 2 videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, The Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the Destructive Arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.